but the women who were killed, nobody even knows how many women have been murdered, but there's about 200 women, there's at least about 100 women who have been acknowledged as having been murdered, but they think there's at least 200, is that right, Margaret, or maybe even many more. And this has been going on since the 80s, as far as we know. The English Collective of Prostitutes was organizing in support of the Black Coalition with Margaret and other women founded, precisely to stop the murders and to bring the murderers to justice. And that was in the 80s, and I remember we organized a picket of the US Embassy, I think it was in 1985 or 1986, something like that, in support of the Black Coalition, yeah, in front of the US Embassy in London, in support of the Black Coalition here. And the film, which is just been released and which we saw in London, there was a preview in London, is astonishing because it really puts the whole thing on the agenda in a way that just cannot be ignored. And the issue is not just the women who were killed, but the way that the police behaved, which enabled those murders. The women were all black. Many of them were sex workers, or at least they were labeled as sex workers. Many of them were also on drugs. And as Margaret always points out, it was at the same time as the FBI and the CIA organized for drugs to flood the black community in Los Angeles, and I'm sure in many other places as well. The man who's on trial for some of the murders, and we are pretty sure that there are other murders as well, but the one who's being tried, who is a black man, who comes from this impoverished community, who worked for the police as a car mechanic, whom the police highly respected, and he had very close relationships with the police. And it was quite clear from everything the police said and didn't do, that they thought he was doing a great job. In other words, he was cleaning the streets and they were cleaning the streets. And that was their view. And in fact, the murders of those black women, when the police found bodies, they would say there was a non-human involved case. Now, I have never heard that in my whole life. I mean, it's not the first time I hear about police brutality, police murders, you know, they happen all around the world. But I was astonished, and I think everybody gasped when we realized that the police were just, you know, when they wrote down their report, it was a no human involved. MAH, what the hell does that mean, no human involved? That's what they thought of those black women. And there has been no outcry, despite many, many years of organizing. And we hope that the film will provoke an outcry. And we hope that a strong connection will be made with Black Lives Matter, because it's such an obvious one. Because black lives did not matter in Los Angeles and still don't, because there hasn't been an outcry. Now, it's not only black lives. It's also, I was reading in the Guardian just before I left to come to this country from London, there was a massive article about an indigenous woman who was shot dead by the police. I can't remember where it was and I can't remember her name. And the article was making a comparison between the shooting of this woman and the shooting of a dog, also by the police. The police shot a dog in somebody's car, which was outrageous. But there were immediately demonstrations about the dog, and there were no demonstrations about the indigenous woman. In fact, there seemed to be a general agreement that she, who had been an alcoholic, in fact, you know, anyway, she had a tragic life story. She was a mother of a number of children, some of whom had been removed by social services. So you can imagine the pain that woman had. Okay, that somehow she deserved what she got. The dog was innocent, and therefore there were demonstrations, but she deserved what she got. And to this day, and since we've been here, I haven't heard anybody refer to the murder of this woman. So it's not only black lives, of course it's people of color, and of course it's sex workers, and of course it's impoverished communities. And it's anybody who's criminalized You know, that's what it's like. And it's not just in the US, it's all over the world. You know, I come from a country where 30,000 people have disappeared under a military dictatorship. And to this day, we are campaigning to get justice. But I must say, we have largely got justice, and at least 400 military are now in prison, okay, for having murdered all those thousands of people. And I'm not talking about small fish, I'm talking about big fish. All the head of the government at the time, okay, Videla died in prison. He didn't die a free man. And the trials are continuing. So justice can be got if we keep organizing, and those were struggles led by women, the brothers and the grandmothers of the disappeared, who are famous around the world, who have definitely spearheaded that movement for justice. So it's not that we can't win, it's just that we have to prioritize the movement over our personal ambitions. The brother from Quebec just told us the whole story. You know, the person who was going on about the living wage or whatever it is, the basic income, as soon as he got a place in the system, he said it can be done. That means his pay packet didn't allow him to do any further campaigning, and he was going to stand in the way of anybody campaigning for it. And that is what we face all the time. People from the movement becoming the state and using their power not for the rest of us, but against us. That did not happen with those organizations of women in Argentina, and that's what we have won so much.
I wanted to say something there because I feel like I'm excited for this film to come out. I think it's really important for using the arts as a way to tell these stories, right? To put the faces, to put the names out there. And we see this happening, you know, as Black Lives Matter has grown, there's been this thing around, oh, we don't just mean Black men's lives matter, we mean Black women's lives matter, Black trans lives matter, all these other lives matter, all these Black lives matter. But I want to complicate this a little bit because as you were speaking, I was thinking part of our problem is what, you know, we're just beginning to say this Black Lives Matter, beginning to try to understand together what that means. And when we speak about justice, if we're still speaking about sending people into the prison system and that's what we mean by justice, like we need justice for these lives, and prison is the justice we need, then I feel like that's part of what we have to work on as well, because I think that just perpetuates and perpetuates and perpetuates the pain and the struggle and the trauma, right? And I don't think that this means there's no justice possible. I just think it means like let's have a real conversation about what do we mean by that. And a lot of the folks in LA who are, you know, we were talking earlier with Margaret, bringing up the folks of Dignity Power Now and other folks who are really coming from a prison abolitionist stance. And I just want to raise that because I do think that part of what happens is it becomes hard to raise up the issues that we want justice for, but we still haven't realized what do we mean when we say we want this justice? We want accountability, we want folks to be held accountable for it, but then where's the transformative justice, right? Where is the thing that will not keep recreating the conditions of police and prison systems having total power over us and begging these police to hold themselves accountable and hold others accountable? It's not going to ever happen, right? So I just think it's a question that needs to be held in any of these spaces. What can we do now? What does justice look like now? And also, what is the justice we're creating long term?
Can you repeat the name of the film? And I'll be glad to continue that discussion with you. I'm not on the platform, so I'm not.
Well, what's the name of the film, Margaret?
But I would be glad to have that discussion with you.
Absolutely.
I think there's a problem.
I think there's lots of problems, and I think there's lots of conversations to have there. I don't think it's a resolved question. Even folks who are doing prison abolitionist work now are like, we don't have the answers for how we resolve it right now, but we need to be in that question. Because if we're looking at the furthest future out, the furthest justice we see involves prison, we're not really changing that much.
And the film